Fall is all about cozy comforts, and with Hero Bread, you can enjoy all your favorites and still hit your health goals. From breakfast bagels and meal prepped enchiladas to mouth-watering burgers and cheesy noodles. You won't believe Hero Bread's options have 0 to 5 grams net carbs and are high fiber from the taste and texture. And right now, Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Go to hero.co and use code FALL25 at checkout. That's FALL25 at hero.co. All figures are per serving of Hero Bread. Contains 2 to 18 grams of fat per serving. See the product nutrition panels on hero.co for more information.
Welcome to the Overcomers Overcoming podcast series, where we profile those who are overcoming and those who have overcome various life topics. I am Ron Cooper, along with my wife and business partner, Marty, of the Cooper Culture, who is sponsoring this series. Many people who have overcome life events have inspired me to produce this series. We want you to know you are not alone in whatever you're experiencing. Life has taught me that everyone has a story that someone needs to hear. Join us as we profile those who choose to be a lifestyle chainbreaker. Let's engage their story to inspire us and others within our circle of influence. Welcome back to our Overcomers Overcoming podcast series. We're in the third episode with Coach Rick Sneade. I want to give you my strongest encouragement. If you have not listened to episodes 1 and 2, definitely do that. Coach Rick Sneade, head coach of the Calvert High School football team, has a phenomenal life story that you need to listen to and just absorb yourself into the story. And you're going to hear in this episode just how a positive, determined, I'll never be defeated type attitude is going to help us overcome anything that we are facing. Coach, you have experienced a family failing, a marital failing, but yet there's some very positive parts of your life, of your grandfather, Mr. Piles, a friend and mentor. It seems you've had a lot of encouraging parts of your life, but yet you've experienced some what some of us would feel are some very significant failings, not pointing to you as a failure, but I personally differentiate failings versus failure. Failings are things we do. Failures becomes a personal kind of a thing. That's just my view. But Coach, how did you overcome this kind of stuff? You impress me as having a very, very determined attitude. Nothing will defeat me. How do you project that? How do you work through that when you experience some failings that maybe some of us would think, boy, that would have been a killer to me?
Well, it's kind of a two-edged sword for me because innately I'm a perfectionist, and that's something that I've always known myself to have. When I found my talent in drawing, there was times where I would draw, and maybe I would take a drawing that I've had that are hanging up in our houses and spend a long amount of time on a particular drawing that may take someone else less time because of me wanting to make it perfect and taking a walk away from something when I get flustered because it's not exactly the way I want, but coming back to it and returning it and ultimately producing a product. When you look at some of the artwork that I was able to make, that looks exactly like black and white photos. I just see the details and the small little intricacies of things, and I don't lose or miss those things because that's just the way I think I've always been wired. And then also the passion and the drive that I have to be successful and not let people down. And that may have been something that I intrinsically started to learn when I was a young person. Trying not having a father that I felt like approved of me or loved me the way that I felt I deserved. I believe at some point through my life I was working hard to seek his affirmation. And then when I wasn't able to ever get it to the level that I should have gotten it, it was a trait that never left me. And so it means that I try to overachieve in everything I do so that way I can please others or not fail at something. And in our marriage here, what I found through counseling with Betty, and who, again, she's a godsend, someone that's still in my life to this day and has been used as a resource to help so many of my friends and players, is that it wasn't in our relationship, it wasn't the fight that I had with my first marriage in trying to keep it together there where I faulted. It was not fighting with the right tools. And so, growing up in the house that I grew up in, you knew what you shouldn't do. And oftentimes we see that. We know that we shouldn't do this. If we go through a relationship with an abusive father, or we see someone in our lives that does this or does that, it could even cause us to turn down that path because we can be wired to become that same human being, or we could literally turn in a whole nother direction. And so I'm left here in a broken marriage in 2004. I'm left sleeping on a cot at the University of Maryland, and I'm literally reading the Bible in the morning, having time meditation, reading the Bible at lunch, having time meditation, praying in a desolate field house at the university by myself every night, listening to worship music of my own, going to counseling, only traveling back to the county to go to church with my family. I literally was on the flat of my back, and I reached a spiritual reckoning that I had never experienced before. And through that process of being on my back and going through the hardship of ultimately seeing that this marriage was not going to work out, to literally signing over the divorce papers completely over to her without even going to court. It was a humbling experience that allowed me to become completely pliable to allow Christ to ultimately form me into the man that I am today. And, you talk about the determination and the willingness to get over and conquer. It was a humbling experience because I think up to that point, everything I did was to do things to be right, but not do things righteously. And there's a difference there. In that when you're doing things righteously, you're being guided by the Spirit. When you're doing things right, it's kind of legalistic. You understand what your rules are, you understand what you should be doing, so you're going to teach and promote right, you're doing right. But right here, it might not be right here. And so righteously is where you're being governed and guided by the Spirit. And I relinquished my entire mind, body, and spirit to Christ, and it changed the way I approached. I mean, literally that fall, I can remember coaching young men at the University of Maryland. They were playing big-time football games against big-time football opponents on national TV, and literally humbling myself to those guys that I was coaching on a scout team and telling them how I failed them that day, speaking testimony, and leaving that situation, deciding in that moment that, I'm going to walk away from the college profession, get back to some roots, and come back to the county and begin coaching high school ball again. Because the influences of coaching college ball, I believe at that moment I wasn't right or wasn't ready for that situation, because I felt like my story and my impact would have greater influence over high school kids, because the college game is at that time, the way I see it, the perspective that I was in, it was a business, and your influence for the heart was a little different than it was at the high school level. And I'd been to high school level, and I felt like it was important for me to come back to the high school level with this new renowned, intentionality of coaching. And so we come back to Calvert County after leaving Maryland. The divorce is settled. I move on, and my roots was to come back to the county and eventually coach with Jerry Franks, who was the gentleman who brought me in and coached me when I was in high school, talked to me as a junior in high school when I was thinking about not playing football because of my relationship with my grandfather. Mm-hmm. Brought me on as a first-time head coach at Calvert High School when we were here. Guy that I had a long time looked at as a mentor, a guy who cared about me, and I came back and coached him at Huntington High School in a very different way than I coached with him the first time. Again, same morals, same values, same passion, same energy, but with different intent.
Coach, what I'm hearing you say is that there's some families, some people who follow the trend of the past. You became like your father because you could have said, that's all I knew. You chose not to. You saw that's not right. And not to denigrate your dad, but you had to make a moral decision that what the behavior you're looking at is not what you want. You'll not be a part of that. The failed marriage, you acknowledge that, yes, things maybe you could have done different there, but now I'm curious. Where it sounds as if you may have been possibly 25 years old until I, Coach Rick Sneade, feel that I have my life in order, things are on the right track and so forth. Is that about the point at which, thinking back, that things were starting to come together, that you were starting to have some real purpose in your life, if purpose is a correct term?
Yeah, 29 or 30 years old now. I'm now learning exactly what I'm called to do and why I'm called to do it. I mean, like I said, at this point, 30 years old, I've already been coaching at some capacity for 14 years now. I served in the Marine Corps, and again, the Marine Corps, so much of that is intrinsically who I am. I love the Marine Corps. It was a chance for me to give back and serve the country that I believe so vehemently in. Although my grandfather didn't find much value in it and didn't have as much pride in it as I did, he did do the Marine Corps thing, so I felt like it was symbolic for me to do it as well. So I have all these things stashed up, and then of course my new profound, stronger commitment in my walk with Christ. All these things start to play out, and we go back to where I was when you asked about the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of my life, and we're looking at that moment when Mr. Powell's asked me to coach Little League Baseball. At that point, my life was just negative, and then, I couldn't adequately be able to adjust or do anything to change that negativity in my life until I found something positive. Mm-hmm. And what I found was, in that moment, I moved in, backtracking just a little bit, through the separation process of my first wife. I moved in with my aunt and uncle, Dave and Lenny, and my cousins, Kelsey and Dana. And I moved in with them, lived with them 3 months. And that was the thing that probably woke me up, in conjunction with all the background building of my spirit through counseling, seeing a healthy and functional relationship of a family. They had it. Mm-hmm. They had it. And I saw it. And so what I realized was, by me not committing these really bad atrocities in my relationship with my wife, that wasn't the problem. And the problem was that I didn't replace the things that I didn't do with something else that I should have been doing, mm-hmm. which obviously being intentional to nurturing the relationship and feeding my wife's flower, right, or her feeding me. There was none of that going on there. And that goes back to the fact that, I wasn't going to be able to get through that negativity until I was able to replace it with something positive. Mm-hmm. There was nothing, although I took all these things out that you shouldn't do in a relationship with my first wife, I wasn't pouring anything into it, though.
Yep.
And so it wasn't growing. And that's the biggest thing that I learned from, one, going through counseling, the divorce, being there to see my aunt and uncle in the way they lived, and being there with my cousins, and then now migrating and returning back to Huntington High School and coaching there from 2005 to 2010. That whole journey, and then now getting married to Kristen, my wife now, mm-hmm. and the one I've been married to for 11 years. All that journey was about getting me to a place where I could have the most significant impact on others, a more intentional impact on others. Not just by chance that these kids would come into our lives, that people would come into our lives and see a person who does the right things and tells them what they should or should not do, but ultimately help deliver the truth into these folks to help them see that in their own personal walks, that it's not about doing right or wrong, it's about doing the right and not the wrong, because you have the truth in you, and you should be living a servant type life for others, and you should be living an intentional life of purpose for yourself and others. And that's where we got to. It's almost to the point that in the year of 2010, when this job was opening, and I lived in Port Republic, and Coward High School, had really, from the times I was here back in 1999, 2002, those days of the glory days, if you will, of Coward High had long faded away. Mm-hmm. The program had been disheveled, dumped upside down when the new school, Huntington High School, opened, because of the way they redistricted the lines, and kids picked and choose schools they're going to go to, a lot of stability and foundational pieces of this school fell apart. And here I was at Huntingtown, reaping the rewards of a very successful program, working next to a guy like Coach Franks, who I love dearly, who taught me a lot. And yet there's a tug in my heart that says, Huntingtown High School is going to be okay. There's some different ways that you can do this, Rick. You're not in the business to be head coach, but your calling needs to be in a place that needs it the most. And you need to come to Calvert. And things just aligned, and I got a job at Calvert in 2011, and that's where we've been since. And because Calvert was in a place where a lot of things needed to happen to change its culture and to help our kids feel a different type of success, to feel a different type of love and joy and passion for being a Cavalier. We could go in here and do things completely different without anybody holding us to the candle about, we're not winning games or anything like that. So we've really flipped it on its head as far as trying to do things culturally and systematically and foundationally different to elicit a more intentional response to the development of our young people who leave this program. And furthermore, the impact we have through our young people and our program on the people around us and our community around us.
Coach, first off, I want to thank you for serving our country in uniform. That's very important. So I want to make sure our listeners know that you dedicated a part of your life to the Marine Corps and our country. Referring to I'm going to use the term sixth sense. You do have that. You can read people very well. I've seen you in action with our student athletes, and you can read them real well. And it would seem to me that's been a part of your life experience that you have put into action that others saw into you, your grandfather, Coach Piles, Mr. Piles, your parents, your family, and so forth. They saw, it seems, they could see the potential in Rick, and you were not living your full potential. That's my perception of your story. You had the innate ability that you will not be defeated. You're a perfectionist, and it seems you at some point in your life knew that you weren't living what it is you wanted. Very possibly you couldn't totally define what it is you did want, but you knew what you didn't want, that kind of thing. Coach, can you stay around for a fourth episode? Because there is so much that we can all learn from your experience. How do we carry forward the lessons learned from the past? And it's no intention of focusing on the past, but there's so much life experience, what we have learned. How can we help others who may be going through something similar to this? How do we identify it? And how do we create chain breakers? I'm not going to do what has been a part of my past. That behavior stops right here. I'm going to move forward with something more positive. Can you stay with us, Coach? You have so much wisdom. You've got such a great story. Others need to hear this.
Absolutely.
Contact us at ron@thecooperculture.com or marty@thecooperculture.com if you would like to get more information, or if you would like to discuss a strategic approach to how to help someone who needs encouragement to overcome their current life challenge. We're here to work with you, to help you and those within your circle of influence to overcome life obstacles. Marty and I have produced digital courses on relationships, interviewing skills, and overcoming financial challenges in dating and marriages that you can find by clicking on the store in the introductory page of this podcast series. We hope you will find these resources useful in your life journey. We look forward to establishing a dialogue with you, as our heart's desire is to establish a meaningful relationship with others. Let's all lead from and with the heart to show others we genuinely care.